Hey YouTube, I'm back in the kitchen and this time I'm cooking, not sewing. So I thought this might interest y'all. This is my new favorite chocolate chip cookie recipe. It is delicious. So I'm going to show you how it's made. The ingredients, and I will put all these ingredients down in the description box below, so if you don't catch it while I'm running through it, don't worry. But it is pretty interesting. We're going to use 2 sticks of unsalted butter and 100 grams, which is about half a cup of granulated sugar, just regular sugar. And if you don't have a kitchen scale, just some little cheap scale where you can measure grams and ounces, you should really get one. It makes things so much easier. I just love mine. And I've had this one for years now, so they last forever. 250 grams of dark brown sugar, which is about 1.5 cups. Then we're going to use 190 grams of all-purpose flour and 127 grams of bread flour. And if you look, it will say bread flour. It's definitely something different. Then 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder and a teaspoon of baking soda. And also, don't forget the difference. This is powder, this is soda. There's a difference. It calls for a teaspoon of salt, which I have put, and I've already put the baking soda and the baking powder and the salt in here. Now, the next thing we're going to need is 2 eggs and 1 egg yolk. So we're going to have to separate an egg. So this will be the fine art of egg separation. Now first, we just need 2 large eggs, and these are at room temperature. So there's 2. Now, for this one, all I need is the yolk. So I'm going to get the white out first. So crack your egg, split it. The white will just kind of come out and then just go back and forth. They make gadgets for this, but it's really not that hard. Okay, so there's my 3rd yolk. Now into my eggs, I'm going to put 2 teaspoons of vanilla. There's 1. And a little bit shy on that. I'll get another bottle. Top that off. There we go. Now, and let's stir these up. Now, it was interesting that we have granulated sugar and brown sugar mixed. And it's interesting that they mix, or that we mix a little bit of bread flour in with the all-purpose flour. But this is the secret. What we're fixing to do now, we're going to take these 2 sticks of butter and we're going to come over here to the stove. We're not just going to melt them. We're actually going to brown, maybe even a little bit burn the butter. This gives it a flavor that is out of this world. I have the 2 sticks of butter in my skillet here, turned up to fairly high heat, a little bit more than medium, and it's melting now. I usually do this in a little saucepan, but the saucepan has a black lining and it's hard for you to see the caramelization. So I was going to try to do it in this lighter colored skillet, but we're just going to let it melt and then let it come to a boil. Okay, it's really starting to boil now. You can hear it crackling and popping. We want to let it get finished with all this. We're looking for it to start making caramel colored droppings down in the bottom. That's what has the flavor. So we're going to let it sizzle here for a while. Because we're not looking for burnt butter, we're looking for browned butter. And once it stops all the sizzling, you're watching the bottom. You see the caramel color coming up? Let's let it caramelize just a little bit more. Remember, we don't want to burn it, we just want to brown it. I'm going to wait till it totally stops all the sizzling. And right about then. That looks good. It's dark brown but not black. So I'm going to take it off the heat and keep stirring. Keep stirring. And this is your browned butter. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the brown sugar and the white sugar and dump it into a heat-proof bowl because I'm fixing to add that hot butter. So you don't want to put it in something that's going to melt. And I'm going to go ahead and stir this up. Just whisk this up to get it mixed. Make sure that brown sugar is all crumbly because sometimes I get a hard piece in there and it stays hard. Okay, now we're going to add the hot butter. Make sure you get all of those crumbs. And I'm going to stir this with a stiff spatula or a good spoon. You want to get it good and stirred. Okay, and that's what we're looking at now. The brown sugar with the browned butter, good and stirred. And I'm going to set this to the side because it has to cool a little bit now. My next step is going to be to add the eggs in here, and you don't want it so hot that it cooks your eggs. So I'm just going to set this to the side, and I will keep stirring it periodically. Now I have my eggs with the vanilla in it already stirred. And the next thing I want to do is combine my two flours with the baking soda, the baking powder, and the salt. And I'm going to stir that up real well. I have a little tiny metal whisk I usually use for this, but I don't know where that is right now, so we're just going to use what we can find. You're just trying to get that stirred up, mixed in real well. You can sift it if you want to. I just always make such a mess when I'm sifting. I try to whisk it. Okay. Let me stir the sugar and butter a few more times. And that's the program right now. I'm just going to keep stirring this and wait for it to cool off so that it's just warm. The sugar has cooled off now, or the sugar butter mixture. You don't want to let it get cold because then the butter starts to solidify again. So it's just warm enough to still be stirrable, but it won't cook the eggs. So now we're going to pour the eggs with the vanilla in here. And we're going to stir that. You can use a hand mixer if you want to. I just like the texture of them when you do it all by hand. It's got a softer texture for some reason. I'm not a chemist, so I don't know. I'm not even much of a cook. Okay, so that's good and mixed. Now it is time to pour in the flours that I have whisked around together with the baking soda, the baking powder, and the salt. And we will stir that up, fold that together. Then the fun part comes, because this is just the base batter. So now for the add-ins. You can add 2 cups of whatever you want. Milk chocolate chips are what I've been doing, and they're wonderful. I've used some of the big ones. I've used the small ones. The kids have said do M&Ms. Get it all stirred stirred in here. Good. Now for the add-ins. You're going to need 2 cups of something. Like I said, so far I've used the milk chocolate chips. I used some little ones and I used some big ones, and they were both fantastic. This time I'm going to use half milk chocolate chips and half Reese's peanut butter chips. But then I'm going to try on another batch. I found these chocolate peanut caramel mixed chips. I'm going to try those. I have M&M's ready to do a batch with. And then I'm also going to try oatmeal and cranberries in here. I think that'll be great too. This is just a great base batter. So let me get, that's going to be 1 cup of chocolate and 1 cup of Reese's, and fold it in here. So about a cup of those, and then top it off with these. Okay, so half and half. I did try half pecans and half chocolate chips. That was amazing. So now you're just going to work these in. And this is what we're looking at so far. You do need a really stiff spoon or a really stiff spatula. This is my favorite one for stirring because it really lets you get down in there and get everything mixed up. And you don't have to use the full 2 cups. I was a little bit low one time when I made them, so I just used like 1.5 cups of an add-in, and they were good too. You just about can't mess this recipe up. My husband said, why don't you just make the cookies without any chips in it? And I was like, well, I guess I could do that too. I mean, the batter is just so good. Now, you are ready to spoon these out and cook them, and you're going to do 350 for about 10 minutes is what I'm doing, and I use a pretty large cookie scoop. Just watch your edges. The edges are going to get brown. But it even makes these better if you wrap them up in saran wrap and let them chill for about 12 to 24 hours. For some reason that butter, it kind of develops, I guess, or something, the flavor of it. So those are good, but it's entirely up to you when you want to cook them. They're good, you know, the batter's good for several days. Sometimes I'll just cook 2 or 3 and leave the batter wrapped up in the refrigerator so we can have fresh, warm cookies. But I'm going to wrap this up in saran wrap, and I'm going to let it sit for about 12 hours, and then I'll come back and spoon out some cookies. Okay? See you in a little while. My dough has been resting. I didn't quite make it the whole 24 hours because I was impatient, but they do recommend that with a browned butter, you let it rest for 24 to 72 hours. No more than 72, but at least 24. But I gave this a while. So after it's in the refrigerator, it's going to get hard again because there's so much butter in it. You're going to have to set it on the counter and let it warm up before you can scoop it. I also recommend that if you're going to refrigerate dough, you kind of flatten it out a little bit before you refrigerate it. That helps it warm up a little bit. Now this is the cookie scoop that I use. It's a fairly large one. And we are just going to, I have my oven preheated. I like to bake my cookies at 375 for about 10 minutes. It gets the edges crispy and the center is still soft. Plus, I don't think my oven is as hot as it says it is. I don't know. I guess I should get a thermometer and taste it. But you're just going to take a scoop. I always cook on parchment paper, bake on parchment paper. Makes cleanup a lot easier. And I like to spread these pretty far apart. And you can see I am doing very generous scoops. because I guess you couldn't see, but now you can. So I'm doing very generous scoops on my pan here. And one more for this one. Now, what I like to do with mine is I like that salty sweet combination. So I just lightly sprinkle a little bit of salt on the top of them, and then I press them down just a little. They will spread in the oven, but I like to give them a little bit of a head start. So I'm going to put these in the oven for about 10 minutes, and then we'll pull them out and see how they look. And here we are. 10 minutes later, they look delicious. So I'm going to set them on a rack to cool for just a little while, and then I'm going to try to find some people to help me eat these. Otherwise, I will eat them all myself. So give them a try and let me know what you think. Thanks for hanging out with me. See you next time. Bye.